as champion!
Hey everyone, today we're going to talk about conceptualizing the idea of counters in the game. How each hero interacts with other heroes, basically how you can counter certain heroes, but we're going to do it in a way that is very personal to your playstyle. It's going to be broad enough that you can apply it to your personal preferences for hero selections and which subcategories you like to play more than others. We're not going to just zero it in on this hero counters this hero. We want to look at it more in a way that is able to be applied to each individual person. Essentially, this is going to be an introduction video to a longer series of videos that I'm working on that takes a more in-depth look at each hero in the game and really examines which series of heroes is best for approaching countering that hero. We're approaching this almost like a job application that you're trying to fulfill the requirements for. We need to check off certain attributes of heroes, then narrow down, okay, so this hero is capable of doing this against this hero, or this hero is capable of shutting down this hero's particular ability. We want to focus on a broad spectrum of abilities that a certain hero possesses, and then check off ways that we can counter that. And the reason we're doing it in this particular way is that this game has enough depth that it's capable of sustaining more than a simple rock paper scissors approach to countering. It's a lot more complicated than that. Not only is it different based on play styles and based on player level skill, it's really also dependent on the map. It's dependent on which portion of the map you're playing on. There's so many factors involved with one hero fighting against another hero that you can't just say scissors beats paper or Soldier 76 beats Pharah. 76 may be the right choice to play against a certain Pharah. As you see in this game in the background, we are getting our asses handed to us in the first section of this map. I mean, it's embarrassing how badly it's going, and part of the reason is they have 3 Pharahs and we are not able to deal with that. And as you can see, we get to the second checkpoint in the game and things turn around. And the reason things turn around is we change classes. We change our hero selection up, and suddenly things go very, very differently. It's almost like it's not the same game. We suddenly turn things around and we end up crushing them in the end, even though they were destroying us in the first couple checkpoints. And it's not just the fact that a few of our members changed to classes that were able to deal with 3 Pharahs better, but it's also that certain areas of the map changed. They weren't given as much of a height advantage in the enclosed area of the hangar that we end up winning the game in. They are limited to a certain amount of entrances into that area, so we could focus our fire before they were able to get their height advantage. There's a lot of different factors. In particular, if I was to just tell you 76 is the right counter to Pharah, I think that's shortchanging you. I think that you have to look at it in a more broad way, because perhaps you don't like playing 76. Perhaps you think he's boring, or you just are not good with him. So what I'm going to do in this video is I'm going to lay out the different factors that I use at any given time to assess that I need to change to this hero to counter another hero. And then I'm going to eventually make a video for each hero in the game and lay out a series of heroes that are capable of being able to counter that hero, and then letting you choose from that list of what you are more comfortable with, or what you think in any particular situation, specifically certain parts of the map, which hero is your choice for countering. So we're going to start by just taking a quick look at these are the main factors that I use when trying to determine what needs to be the correct choice for a counter. So we want to look at the hero that is destroying us in any particular situation that we want to counter, and we want to look at that hero's potential damage range. Damage range is really the most important facet of counters in this game. Taking a look at either short versus long, mid-range versus short, or mid-range versus long, it's really going to come down to what effective range is the hero that you're trying to counter, and how best you can avoid that damage, or more importantly, how best you can negate that advantage and instead use a hero that is going to use counter damage to that. And we're going to get more into that in a second. The second aspect we want to look at is damage type, whether we're dealing with splash damage, whether we're dealing with precision damage, burst damage. We want to look at what type of damage you can avoid and how you're going to be able to get around that type of damage. Also, it's important to keep in mind your group composition, because you want to keep that balance of tank, healer, and damage, and you don't want to disrupt that too much. So that's why we're really getting a broad spectrum of potential heroes for a counter, and we're not just narrowing it down to 1 or 2 heroes. And finally, you always have to keep in mind the map. The map and where you're fighting at any particular moment is huge. It's a huge deal, which again plays to the idea that it's impossible to say this hero counters this hero. It's not plausible in a lot of situations, and we have to take a sort of an abstract look at things and in a very specific, detailed look at things, rather than just give some definitive counter, table that's going to say, oh, hey, this guy's beating you, we'll choose this hero and you're going to win. It's not the case, and I would be cheating you if I said it was the case. So this is an introduction video. This is just to get you thinking about these types of things, and we're going to do a quick sample case that relates to this game. But again, think of this thing in broad terms, and think of this thing as something that you can use as a tool. This isn't a cheat sheet as much as I would like it to be. This is more of a broad outline of a way to think about the game. So in this particular game, what ends up happening is, again, their Pharahs are destroying us. I'm playing Zenyatta, and Zenyatta, surprisingly, is actually, I would say, the support counter to Pharah. He has the ability to debuff her and allow your team to do extra damage, even though she has that vertical mobility and that range that she can really create distance and be able to do splash damage to teams that are grouping up together. And it's really, Zenyatta is separate from the group as a healer. He can stay, by himself and not get hit with splash damage. He can maintain range himself. He can increase that distance and still do damage and debuff and heal. He would appear to be the right choice for a support in this role, and we're getting destroyed. And I'm not the best Zenyatta player, and what ends up happening is after this, around when the second capture point is taken, one of our other members on our team switches to a Mercy. And I looked at that at first and I thought, well, okay, if he really wants to be the healer support, then that's what he can do. And I thought, well, how can we counter 3 Pharahs? And so I ran through this list in my head, and I took into account that Pharah's range is long. She's a long-range damage dealer. She can get high up in the air, maintain that overlook position, and really just rain down heavy splash damage on clumped up groups of players, or if they're good enough, land those direct hits and just do a massive amount of burst damage. And so I thought to myself, okay, I'm going to take those 2 things, keep them in mind, and what would I need to counter that? If she's long range, and in this particular case, this long range hero is, in most cases, you're not able to get to them. Unless you're a Winston or another Pharah or another hero that has the ability to vertically get to where she's at, you have to rely on range damage to do damage to her. So that narrows it down. You don't want a short range class. Okay, so that narrows it to classes that are capable of mid to long range damage, depending on the map, depending on where you're at. At this point, we were in the hangar, so mid-range was sort of viable, and so 76 becomes an option. 76 can do mid to long range damage, and at this point, I realized, okay, what else can 76 do? Well, 76 can operate kind of on his own. He has his own self-heal. He's a pretty tough hero. He's capable of burst of quick movement, so he can separate himself from people if he needs to. So he can avoid splash damage in certain situations. Essentially, he can do the type of range damage that he needs to do. He can avoid the damage type that's incoming to him from the types of heroes that are dominating you. This particular group composition, somebody decided to go healer besides me, so I was able to switch off Zenyatta. And finally, this particular area in the map brought Pharahs a little bit closer to us. They couldn't get as much distance, and it allowed us to really narrow down the points of entry into our area of operation. And so 76, we ended up getting two 76s by the end, and we had a McCree to kind of counter their McCree, and it worked. Everything clicked. Hope you guys found these guidelines useful for building your own personal countering webs and developing ways that you feel comfortable countering certain heroes in the game. I am currently in the process of putting together a pretty comprehensive list of my own preferences for counters, but this is essentially pulling back the curtain and showing you what I'm thinking about when I'm building these particular videos, and hopefully you guys can learn something from it and go out in your own games when we get to release and counter some heroes. Good luck out there, guys.
Everyone heal up.
Everyone get on the fence.